Year 8, and welcome to Lesson 6 of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And our lesson objective today is to track the development of a character in the novel. And we're going to be focusing in on Peter in particular. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to reflect on the most significant things that Peter has said and done so far in the novel. So have the internet copy of the novel open, or if you're lucky enough to have a copy of the book at home, have that open and see if you can begin to create a timeline of the key events that convey Peter's personality so far. So I've done example 1 for you. In chapter 1, one of the first things we're told about Edmund is that he laughs when he first sees the professor. Okay, and so for the rest of chapters 1 through till the end of chapter 6, can you think of 2 moments in the chapter where you think Edmund is shown in a really important key way? Your challenge is to include a very short embedded quotation, just like the one I've done, just a single word or a very short phrase, and to just sum up in note form what Edmund has done in that particular moment in the chapter. So here's my timeline on Edmund so far. Chapter 1, Edmund laughed at the professor. Chapter 2, he's bad-tempered and unpleasant around his siblings. Chapter 3, he sneers and jeers at Lucy when she tells him about Narnia. Chapter 3, he's intimidated and quite awkward when he first meets the Queen. Chapter 4, he's revealed as greedy and gullible. Gullible is when you fall into traps quite easily and believe what people are telling you without questioning it. So he's greedy and gullible and he wants more, but he never asks why the Queen is so interested in him and his family. Chapter 4, he falls under her enchantment. Remember, the Turkish delight is drugged. You know, he's kind of been bewitched by her. Chapter 5, he does the most spiteful thing he can think of by lying about Narnia and making Lucy look like she's a fool. And chapter 6, feelings of bitterness and vengefulness towards his siblings. He wants to pay them out when he's proved to be a liar. So we're not getting a particularly positive view of Edmund so far in this novel, are we? It's time for you to read chapters 7 and 8 and think about your timeline. I want you to add 2 more points to chapter 7 and to chapter and 1 more point for chapter 8. Okay, so again, you can read it if you've got the book at home, you can read it online. If you are using the audiobook, just make sure that you've got the text up in front of you and you're following the text as well, because as always, you will be needing evidence from the text in your tasks. Other points that I added to my timeline. Chapter 7, he reacts with horror to the name of Aslan when all of the other children are kind of filled with these very positive feelings. He has a horrible idea of going to the Queen to punish Peter, and the dramatic climax, chapter 8, he is treacherous and betrays them by leaving the beaver's house and going to the Queen. Dum, dum, dum. There are 4 statements about Edmund here, and I'd like you to choose the statement that you most agree with. Number 1, the characters are deliberately juxtaposed to represent the opposing qualities of good and evil. To juxtapose means to put things side by side so that you can see the difference between them very easily. So you've got Edmund being put side by side with the other children, haven't you, with Lucy in particular, and those different qualities then stand out very obviously between the 2 characters, don't they? You could talk about the way in which the reaction to the mention of Aslan was deliberately juxtaposed, so we can see 3 of the children are sort of filled with this incredible positive feeling, whereas Edmund feels this sense of horror. Now, whether that's because he's been bewitched by the Turkish delight, the Queen's Turkish delight, it's difficult for us to say because he was a bit of a rotter even before he met the Queen. I think what the Queen has done is identified those characteristics in him and used them, and used her bewitchment to kind of draw them out and exaggerate them even further. But is he going to stay a baddie for the whole novel? We shall find out. Statement number 2. While the reader may not find Edmund's behaviour appealing, they can understand and sympathise with how he's behaving. We all do funny things in stressful situations, don't we? And when you think about it, not only are they living through the Second World War, the Blitz, they've been evacuated from their home, they've been sent to this house in the middle of nowhere, and now they've been taken to a strange fantasy land. It's not fair to presume that a child his age, and I think he's only about 8 or 9, I think we're told his exact age at some point in the novel. I'll have to go back and double check that, I'm afraid. But he's not, a particularly old child. He's the second youngest, isn't he? Lucy's the youngest. Then it's Edmund. Then it's Susan. Then it's Peter, the oldest. Or is Susan the oldest? Oh dear, I'm going to have to go and double check my facts, aren't I? Anyway, he's very young. He's in a stressful situation. Can we completely blame him for how he is behaving? Statement number 3, Edmund, like all humans, is a complex mix of good and bad qualities. So we've read chapters 1 to 8 so far, and, are there times where he has behaved in a way that isn't entirely negative? Think in particular about how he behaves when he first meets the Queen. And number 4, some of the positive, I put that in inverted commas there, in showing that perhaps they're not positive. Some of the positive qualities Lucy displays aren't always positive in everyday contexts. And you might want to think about changing times here, because this was written in the 1950s and the freedoms children had were very different, weren't they? Life and society was quite different. It was safer then. So, Lucy meets a stranger in the woods and goes back to his house for tea. So if you did that nowadays, there would be alarm bells ringing all over the place, and the police would probably be involved, wouldn't they? I read Swallows and Amazons with my children recently, and not only does the mother in Swallows and Amazons go and camp on a lake, on a little island in the middle of the lake, that's fine, take your little brother with you, he can't swim yet, but that's fine, you row him across the water. She turns up halfway through their little week's holiday on this island and gives them knives, gives them pocket knives, what are they called? Swiss Army knives. And my son turned around and looked at me and he said, "You'd never do that, would you? You wouldn't let me go out on a boat on my own with Ed, his younger brother, and then turn up and give me a knife." I'd probably be arrested if I did that now. So you might want to think about how, although we're seeing Edmund as the negative character, maybe some of the other characters aren't quite as positive as we think they are. I think there are times when, the 3 other brothers and sisters are a bit mean to him, and no wonder he feels a little bit ganged up on and reacts quite badly. So which one of those statements do you agree most strongly with, and do you feel most confident about writing? And then you are going to have a go at just creating a well-developed P paragraph. As your challenge, can you try and comment directly on the language used by the writer when you bring your evidence in? So remember what I said, you must have the text open, you must be using quotes to prove what you're saying about these characters. So for example, if I was talking about statement number 3, and I was looking at the negative quality of him being unkind to his younger sister, I could comment directly on Lewis's use of the verb sneered and really show my understanding of what sneered means and how a reader will respond to the fact that Edmund is sneering. So on your worksheets then, your point, you can either just highlight which point you're using from the 4 that are listed, or you can copy that across to the point box. Bring your evidence in, so go back to the text and find at least one quote that proves what you're saying, and then try and explain. And you'll notice that the box that I've given you for the explanation is the biggest, because that needs to be the most well-developed part of your work. Okay, good luck with that. As usual, send that back to your teacher via the Google Classroom.